Here's little Robert Kiyosaki. He has two fathers. One of them has a PhD, the other never finished 8th grade. Both earn substantial incomes, yet one is always struggling financially, while the other is going to become the richest man in Hawaii. One is going to die, leaving tens of millions of dollars to his family. The other is going to leave bills to be paid. The problem with financial education is that it isn't taught in schools, so family decides to teach it. Now, the problem with this is that unless your parents are born in the top 10%, they are likely going to teach you how to be poor. Not because they don't love you, they just don't know what they are teaching you, and they don't read books like Rich Dad Poor Dad and The Richest Man in Babylon. Another great one is also Think and Grow Rich. My story is very similar. I was taught how to be poor. It was only when I started working in my 9-to-5 job I realized that it was impossible to save and build wealth and to do things like buy a house and a nice car. That's when I started to seek the solution to my problem, and I went home one evening and came across The Richest Man in Babylon. All my 4 years of university of doing complex calculations, exams and expensive courses, yet I received a more pragmatic advice from reading a single book from Robert Kiyosaki than I did by taking 4 years of complicated classes. I never had a rich dad, but I have many rich dads now. My mentor Jim Rohn, Grant Cardone, Robert Kiyosaki, Gary Vee, and the list goes on. So if you weren't born into the top 10%, let's learn from Robert Kiyosaki, who learned from his rich dad. You have to know these two simple words, assets and liabilities. Now forget what you have learned in accounting classes or from your poor parents. We are going to define them in simple terms. Asset is anything that puts money into your pocket. A liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. Anything can be an asset or a liability. If you own a house and it eats away $500 a month, then it's a liability. If you own a house and it brings in $1,500 a month, then it's an asset. Assets are things like businesses, real estates, and paper assets like stocks, mutual funds, and bonds. Here's why knowing this is very important. Poor people only have expenses, the rich buy assets, the middle class buy liabilities that they think are assets. After graduating, if I had followed society advice, I would have gotten a job which increases my income, but there are so many problems with that. I would have moved from my little apartment into a bigger house. I would have gotten a BMW instead of a Honda Civic 2005. I would have probably even bought the latest iPhone. The problem with this is that I think I would be acquiring assets, but the fact is I would be actually acquiring liabilities. I would have to pay more every month for the house and the car. In essence, unless you make a paradigm shift about what you do with your money, which is to buy actual assets, no matter how much income you earn from your job, you will match it with your liabilities and expenses. Your friends might admire your iPhone 12 and you might look rich, but you actually might never be rich. There's nothing wrong with having a job. I have one too, but I'm also operating from assets quadrant. But if you're following the standard narrative of going to school, getting a job, chances are you're acquiring liabilities which you think are assets, and that is a problem. So keep your job, but make sure what you earn goes mostly towards assets rather than liabilities that seems like asset. And yes, eventually you'll acquire enough assets you won't need your job either. It absolutely blows my mind how people say, well, what if I lose my money with the business or real estate or with paper assets? They don't say the same thing about buying their huge TV which will worth less in a year, which creates an expense every month. Oh yes, a year purchase or credit, that's an expense. I would rather lose all of my money buying stocks than lose it buying yet another TV that I don't need. What if you purchase a new iPhone 12 and someone just stole it from you? Even if I lost my money, the lesson learned from investing in stock would be infinitely more valuable than watching Comedy Central. Here's another problem. It's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. If I told you I was going to pay you $1 million every month, but I took away $999,999, you'd have to be an idiot if you say you're making $1 million. Most kids are told by their parents to become a doctor and they'll be rich, yet doctors pay half or even more of what they earn to government. You get taxed when you earn. You get taxed when you spend. You get taxed when you save. And guess what? you get taxed when you die. On the other hand, you can operate from the asset quadrant and pay sometimes even zero in taxes. The rich are too smart for this. A poor person thinks of a bunch of building when he thinks of a corporation, when in reality, it's folders full of papers. A folder full of papers that allows the rich to make all the expenses and then pay their taxes at the end. So the rich will never be affected by any of this. It will always come down to the middle and the upper class, the people who work the hardest to pay the benefits for the person with the bag of chips in one hand and the remote in the other.